Modern Love, the podcast, is supported by...
Produced by the iLab at WBUR, Boston.
From the New York Times and WBUR Boston, this is Modern Love. Stories of love, loss, and redemption. I'm your host, Meghna Chakrabarty. When Anna March started dating her boyfriend Adam, people made a lot of assumptions about their relationship because Adam is paraplegic. But as Anna writes in her piece, Finding My Own Rescuer, most of those assumptions didn't reflect reality. Her essay is read by Mandy Moore, who stars in NBC's This Is Us.
I'm alive. That's what Adam kept whispering as he waited for the ambulance. At 16, he was trapped in a mangled minivan, his spine twisted at the 7th thoracic vertebrae. He was in so much pain he knew he couldn't be dead. I'm alive, he repeated, both to stay that way and to count his blessings. I met him 24 years later, when we were both in our 40s. By then, he was zipping around in a sporty wheelchair. When I asked him how he had become a paraplegic, he told me about the accident. His friend driving, sober, but going too fast. About his weeks in the hospital and months in rehab. About the agonizing surgery to fuse his spine. And then counseling, where he was encouraged to mourn his old life and accept his new one. An incomplete paraplegic. He still has some feeling and motion below his injury, meaning yes, he could have sex. Which was good to know. After we started seeing each other, that was the first question my friends asked. I was crazy about Adam. I told him everything about my life. My abusive father, complicated mother, failed relationships, professional crises and successes. He told me of his post-college depression, of working in gang intervention programs and litigation, of his relationships with women, which had been good, but complicated. Soon we were living together in my tiny beach cottage with my timid rescue Labrador and his aggressive rescue pug, laughing so hard the dogs barked. It was joyous. Joyous and steamy. I had decided that however good the sex was or wasn't, we would be okay. But when we crossed that threshold, it was better than either of us had imagined it could be. A year later, we got engaged and bought a neglected but beautiful house 3 blocks from the Rehoboth Beach, Delaware boardwalk. I imagined having sex in the private outdoor shower, in our vintage bed with lemony sheets. We moved in, and for 2 weeks, despite the exhaustion of unpacking, we floated on a cloud of love and new beginnings. Then something changed, and we stopped having sex completely. Here's the thing about Adam and me. Despite all appearances with him being disabled, I actually consider myself to be the less able person in the relationship. People may assume that Adam is dependent on me, but I think it's the other way around. He's the stronger one, and I rely more on him. At first, it seemed like he could do almost everything on his own, balancing against his Subaru and tossing the wheelchair into the hatchback, then maneuvering in and driving off using hand controls. In the morning, he would walk the dogs while I slept. He handled most of the grocery shopping and cooking, and he had his emotional house in order. As for me, although I like to joke about my crazy childhood, in school until 3, a screaming mother until evening, and an abusive father into the night, it was no laughing matter. I'm okay now, but for a long time, I wasn't. After 2 failed marriages, decades of messes, and finally, self-forgiveness, I was still trying to extricate myself from that emotional cellar when I met Adam. Before him, I had never felt love, security, and happiness with a good man I adored. That's why people who think Adam would be lost without me have it backward. After his world fell apart at 16, he rebuilt it, year after year, and now he is a fortress. My world was also blasted apart when I was a child, but I'm just getting a handle on it now. In many ways, it's as if I'm trying to escape from a crushed minivan of my own and having to remind myself, just as he once did, that I'm okay, that I'm alive. In my 1-story cottage, Adam's using a wheelchair didn't affect us much. But in the house we had bought, the entrance ramp wasn't finished, and it had 3 floors. So until it was fixed up, he had to depend on me to get him in, out, and around. In addition to my full-time work, I was the one now running the errands and walking the dogs. I was the one hauling moldy beach umbrellas, warped books, and broken coolers to the growing pile of trash in the backyard. To get those ramps and grab bars installed, I was also the one supervising carpenters, painters, and stonemasons. One evening after the contractors left, Adam, trying to help, picked up a heavy box of discarded bathroom tiles and other trash and headed for the pile outside. As he rolled toward our mudroom, the box slipped off his lap, sending dozens of filthy tiles crashing to the floor, along with someone's leftover Big Gulp cup, which splashed soda over freshly painted walls. I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or run away. Instead, I said, "Leave me alone. I don't need your help." Adam disappeared, and I cleaned up alone, crying. "I can't do this," I whispered as I swept and scrubbed. "Not this house or this man." Afterward, too worked up to sleep, I leashed Fred, my dog from pre-Adam days, and headed into the night. Soon I stood at my old cottage just blocks away. I admired the striped curtains in the window. Inside, I could see my gorgeous old bookcase, which I had carted with me through 6 moves, having to finally abandon it because it didn't fit the airy coastal cottage feeling we wanted. Now, I missed it. And Fred was staring, with longing, I thought, at his former backyard. "Do you wish we were still here? Just us?" I asked. Immediately, I wanted to reel back my words. I didn't want to return to that life any more than I wanted Adam to leave me alone. I thought of how he tried to help, even though he too was exhausted. I thought of the time he drove for 2 hours so I could run into stores to find the caramels my grandmother likes for her birthday, of how he stocks ice cream sandwiches for me and quiets the dogs every morning when he rises with them so I can sleep. I felt overcome with love for him. How could I have been so awful earlier? Back home, he was asleep in our bed. I crawled quietly into my side, feeling love for him, but still not wanting to touch. I hated the distance between us, but I couldn't overcome it. Sex had always been a positive and passionate thing for us. Now I not only didn't want to have sex, I also couldn't even get close. One night I went online and looked up spinal cord injuries and premature death. Then I read for hours, confirming what I had always suspected but hadn't contemplated. How susceptible he is to blood clots, infections, and gangrene. The summer before, Adam had fallen asleep on a heating pad, never feeling it cooking his skin. The burn took months to heal, leaving a postcard-sized scar. It made me crazy with fear. I can't take it if you die from something we could have controlled, I told him. He kissed my head. We don't control anything. I snapped at him to stop the Zen stuff. Reading online that night, I knew I was right. His injury had devastated him long ago, and he had recovered. He was strong. But he was not as strong as I needed him to be. He was not strong enough to keep me from losing him. We went about our days fixing up the house. We bought a couch and cushions for a rocker. From a vintage fabric book, I chose a pattern to reupholster an armchair. Faded roses on faded blue. I loved it. Adam hated it. I knew he would. This is what I'd do if you died, I said, tapping the fabric sample, feeling the tears coming. I would do the whole house in faded flowers and turn it into a home for troubled ladies. Because I'd want to help people. And I don't really think I could go on without you. Would there be a portrait of me over the fireplace? He asked. I laughed. You'd find love again, he said. Or you'd have a home for ladies. Or both. I'm terrified of losing you, I finally said. And sometimes I hate you for it. He nodded, as if he had been waiting for me to figure that out all along. Okay, he said. But I'm not going anywhere. At least not this week. I had a yard full of trash, a house in disarray, and a Prince Charming in a wheelchair. But he was my love, and this was my life. And that night we pulled our bodies close, hoping to press ourselves together for as long as we both shall live.
That's Mandy Moore reading Anna March's essay, Finding My Own Rescuer. We'll catch up with Anna after the break. Anna March wrote this piece in part to confront people's misconceptions about what it's like to date someone in a wheelchair. She says that she doesn't want to minimize the trauma that paraplegics go through, but Adam's disability was never a big deal to her.
People had this real tendency to act like I was doing some wonderful thing Like, they would touch my arm and sort of act like, bless you, for being in a relationship with someone who was a paraplegic, and it was incredibly gross and condescending. Love isn't about bodies and able-bodiedness or disability. It's just not. It's about commitment and honoring one another and caring for one another and those things. It's not about the walking. Adam and I always used to say it's not about the walking. And I want people to think and understand about what they're saying about ability and disability when they say something like someone who's able-bodied is somehow doing something noble by dating someone with a disability. We're all doing something noble when we openly and honestly try to love someone else.
But Anna and Adam's relationship eventually deteriorated.
About a year after my piece appeared in Modern Love, Adam and I split up, which was very sad and which remains very sad. Even though I can't speak for Adam, but I believe that's what was best for both of us. Although I certainly didn't think that at the time. I think that I didn't love Adam as generously and openly as I could have. And I learned a lot about myself and how to do better and be better from that relationship.
After Anna and Adam broke up, Anna and her dog Fred moved a few doors down from the old cottage where she used to live.
I came back to that very street with Fred, and Fred and I started living there again. I needed to go back and learn how to be a little bit of a better person and a more generous person and a more put-together person in some ways. So I did. I went back and learned how to do, or taught myself, or learned with the help of lots of people sort of how to do those very things.
However, not long after that move, Anna's grandmother and Fred both died.
I feel like I lost everything. In the year between 2015 and 2016, Adam, my grandmother, and Fred were the three most important relationships in my life, actually. And in a 1-year period, I lost all three. And the Anna of today feels like a girl who survived the fire,
Anna has one central thing she's learned from her experience.
Be brave. Be brave in loving someone. Be brave in taking risks about who to love. Be brave about being generous. Be brave about being willing to get hurt.
So we asked Anna if she's dating now.
No, I'm single, and I'm available if you want to drop by with some peach pie.
Anna March. She's 49 now and a writer living in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. More after the break. Here's Daniel Jones, editor of the Modern Love column for the New York Times.
What I really liked about Anna's essay was the way that she turns typical ideas like about disability and vulnerability around. We all bring our disabilities to our relationship, and some of them are on the surface and some of them are buried deep within us, and who's to say who's carrying the bigger burden?
And here's Mandy Moore.
I loved that her perspective and acknowledgement of where she sort of was in her life and how he was so steadfast and strong and helped her sort of overcome her own emotional lack of growth to have this beautiful story together. I really just thought it was just something you don't hear about too often and isn't represented properly, and I thought it was beautiful.
Thanks again to Mandy for reading this week's essay. She stars in the NBC show This Is Us. Jason Alexander is one of our favorite readers for Modern Love, and he's back next week with a new essay.
A parking space was not some gift from the gods, not in any way dependent on personal good luck. Rather, it was the direct result of hard work, carefully honed skills, and yes, raw talent. My dad didn't look for parking spaces, he hunted them down. The ability to find one was to him the measure of a man.
Modern Love is a production of the New York Times and WBUR, Boston's NPR station. It's produced, directed, and edited by Jessica Alpert, Caitlin O'Keefe, John Perotti, and Amory Sievertson. Original scoring and sound design by Matt Reed. The idea for the Modern Love podcast was conceived by Lisa Tobin. Iris Adler is our executive producer. Daniel Jones is the editor of Modern Love for the New York Times and advisor to the show. Music for the podcast, courtesy of APM. I'm Meghna Chakrabarty. See you next week.